Okay. So we're going to start restorative experience today with all the prop support that we could use. So you have a bolster across the mat. You've got a block that's flat right in front, touching the bolster. And then as you guide yourself to sit on the block, you also have a belt around your legs buckled up at the top of the thighs. So as you lower back, I want you to have your sandbag nearby or any bag of weight. And when you lower the legs, stretching them down, okay, you want to feel where the reach is of the, I suppose it's, as I mentioned, we're doing core pathways today. So I want you to get the blanket so you have enough stack of height under your head. So it's just so easeful. You're not like trying to tighten your neck to lift and look. So even if you bulk it up, we just don't want such bulk that we're like pushing our chin down towards our chest, right? So there's openness at the throat, okay? And then as you add your sand across the thigh lids, take a moment where, of course, the belt seems to kind of help that out. It does help orient the legs, but the sand keeps that flow to lengthen down. But also any of the mid-body kind of, I want to say combustion, but you know, when the center piece of the body, the organs, the lower back, things can get kind of compressed. We're trying to work on opening and kind of distributing that circulation out into the limbs. That's a good idea with the restorative practice is influencing the pathways of circulation so it radiates outwards. But if your back feels compression here, what you need to do is let the feet go a little farther apart, or if it doesn't help, you'll bend your knees slightly and just feel still the same orientation of the props, but let the knees be bending. Okay, so take a few moments to settle in to the exploration of the spaciousness of the chest and allowing where the waist lengthens, inhaling slow. So the abdomen has that natural movement and it moves downwards, but you might feel like it just lifts up. But visualize that movement sliding down, and then that diaphragm breathing muscle actually, it moves downwards past, right? The whole awareness of the organs and expands, pushes circulation there. And then as you exhale, comes back up towards the heart. So feeling those circulation realities of breathing, but also you've got things like swallowing and maybe compression that happens in our throat. So you want to take the time, especially when you're in home practice, if you need to have any sound or anything, you're really free to do that. And the circulation eventually gets towards that stillness, slowing. And then the mind might concentrate on the breath besides all the other things, but see if you can feature inhale and exhale. Through exhalation, right, comes relaxation, I find. And if you're tending to work on a kind of a pulling of the abdomen, this is a prime example of trying to reorient your movement of breath without kind of stiffening the middle. But it does really pull the center body apart, this sensation. Also the ribs separate and circulate. But the challenge is not to kind of suck in, but to let the body expand and then settle with the breath. So see if you can feel that habit forming abdomen movement with your breathing. That's going to be our idea today, is habit moving of the abdomen, right? Try to create a habit of moving the abdomen with the breath versus kind of pulling in. I don't know if habits move or not. Now as the legs, either if they're bending or they're extending, you get a feel if you slide your sand away, the motion of the rib cage. So if I'm trying to move my legs in a few moments, I have to find that this rib space is okay with going outwards, right? And we're not trying to create a tunnel with our body, like everything getting smaller. We're actually working on expansive for our circulation benefit. So I'm going to just keep the belt on because it kind of feels curiously like it's helpful. It's kind of a holder, like a bit of a brace. And then as I slide the feet in, or you go ahead and try sliding your feet into the knees, bending. And they don't have to bend really, you don't have to pull your feet as close in. That may not be a good idea to have that as a goal, because then the knees kind of poke forward over the ankle. So you might find what is the least you can walk them in. And then, remember bridge poses where we try to lift, we're not lifting very much, but you can feel if you try to contract a bit with your glutes, you push down into your feet, you react to feeling the buttock muscles, and then the belt doesn't feel quite as tight. So unbuckle, and we'll kind of keep on this theme of the knees bending, and bring the right knee up and get a feel if you can shift the leg just towards your rib cage, and then lower that foot back down and alternate, like you're focusing on this experiment with being on your back and awareness of the body creating a walking or a stride. So since we're standing on our feet, we can't really feel the pelvis like this, but this is a nice way to prepare to walk. Not expecting you would ever do this when you wake up, but just to kind of get the back muscles aware of each side of the pelvis, which is coordinated with each leg. I'm assuming, I'm not completely sure about that, but when you feel that movement, see if you can, just kind of speed it up a bit. We don't have to be doing any fast marching, but when you walk, you probably have a little bit more of a pace than that slow knee to chest. And then notice how your abdomen, if it relaxes. For me, it's relaxed because I'm talking, and I'm breathing with that. But when you're drawing a knee in, can you keep the abdomen and the diaphragm relaxed? That might be two different stories, huh? Okay, lower down, and let's just leave our block where it's at. What we're going to do is slide the blanket back, one of them, just one. So you're down to a single blanket under your head. It may feel like it's kind of a shoulder standy beginning because it's now starting to get the tilt of the spine even further. Now you're going to kind of get on your tippy toes here. Be sure that, I know your neck will feel a little bit more stretch, right? Less blanket, more neck stretch. So you're going to hold on to the sides of the bolster. If you got those little hooks on the bolster, it's pretty nice. Lift up the hips just a little and then push the bolster down ever so slightly, okay? So if I reach down to where my rear is, it's right on the very edge. So I didn't really move it that far. It's still under my pelvis and my lumbars. And then as I lift up, I'm going to move my bolster down a little bit more. You want to be able to lift up your legs and feel that you're on the bolster and that you're really not falling off the other side. So be sure you feel the response. So when you lift your feet up and your knees bend, it's comfortable for your back muscles. You don't want to feel them tense up. Okay. So now I'm going to set up so I've got this support, and the support is going to clearly be adding a belt. So get a belt, and let's see. Let's have our belt. It's unbuckled, I'm sure by now after you did that last pose. Take the knees into bending and then slide the belt to the bottoms of the feet. And I want you to push your feet out wide, so it's a wide stance. But do keep a hold of the belt. Even if you know you can buckle it up and you can be casual, without any hand holding, but I would use your hands so that you're kind of demonstrating some awareness of tension or resistance. I would say probably a better word for us is resistance. We like that. And then when you get a feel of your feet, can you almost find them pushing out like the side bones of the feet? You have your hold on your belt. So you're going to help out so your feet won't turn out. But I want you to find that you're pulling and you let the feet move a little forward, okay? Not to the floor touching, but you feel the abdominal base, the core stomach basin is getting a little bit of pressure. Okay, so as you push into your belt, so I want you to push with your feet without bending the legs. So it might be a little bit outwards. It's hard to go up. That's kind of your limit with your feet, or your leg length is already present. And then spend just a few moments here, maybe closing your eyes. If your hands are getting really fatigued, you can always loosen your hold on them for a moment. Let your elbows relax on the bolster or the floor, which is what I'm doing, is letting my elbows relax. So my pressure with my fingers is a little less. But I want you to just feel where the circulation is in the back of the knees. My hope is it's really safe for you right now with your knees, even though they're straight. And you don't have to have them fully straight, but when they're straight and they're stretched outwards, you know, can you contract the front of the leg so the quadricep kind of stiffens up? And then once you contract that area, you're pulling with your hands, and it's tricky to do this for strength, but you're going to slide your feet together, try to keep the legs, the front tone. Maybe you can't contract them much more, but now as the legs are stretching up, you're going to flex through the feet, get the belt around the center of the foot at minimum, not onto the heel right now, but just the center piece of the foot that feels good for you. And then as the legs are lifted, they're straight up, then find what's vertical feeling for you, which is somewhere between forward and backwards. It's right in the centerpiece. Okay, try to let the legs stay very toned and straight. And the quadriceps may not really be able to do much change because, well, they're upside down. Well, maybe they don't have that discussion, but they are a little bit different for your habits of contracting the muscle. So bend through the left leg, and then as that leg lowers down, I want you to get busy with getting your sand. Hopefully your right foot could just hold that belt. Give the foot a jog like your hand has often. Put the sand on the left thigh, and you know, if it's a little bit complicated to balance it, you know, take some time. If it doesn't go straight down and it just seems to get kind of sloppy, you can always pivot the sand. So it's kind of like a Sand-Aid that's kind of on its side. And I like the block underneath. You can feel that support. It's kind of hard to shift, but if you do have that feeling of the block, it's helpful. And then hold on to the belt, but I want you to buckle it up. So let's actually, you have to take it off your foot, I guess. Oh, well. Okay, buckle up, make a loop. Your loop previously was a little small. So now we're going to make a big, larger loop. And once you find that support under your foot again, you want to make the loop so big that you could reach it to the crown of your head with ease. It goes there with length with the leg vertical. I don't know if a foot can be vertical. And when you reach it behind you, I would take a moment here to feel where the left leg is relaxed. Okay. Then bring your belt right behind your head so the right leg can start to get oriented. And you want your belt so it's above your ears, right? And it's kind of at the shelf at the back of your head that feels, you know, supportive, so you tilt back. Okay, now each person has their own probably questions about this one. How do I know So if I kind of check in, wherever my arms want to be is fine. Hands relaxing either beside you or on you. But you want to be kind of at attention if you need to change your sand or your belt coordination here. Okay, you could tilt your head a little bit, but you want to find that there's some support and length happening at the back of your skull. You know, feeling that there, if it feels like it's kind of sucking into the bone, like you don't feel just a stretch on the leg, but it feels like pressure, resistance behind that right leg. You want to kind of find that versus you're working on your flexibility and kind of yanking your leg back. So I'd be a little careful. I want to feel resistance is what I'm aiming for. Not super casual, like, oh, I just do a little bit and that's fine. But work on this practice so you can get some benefit in the bones. And this one's going to kind of suction up into the hip. Okay, so let the arms spread out. And then if you're comfortable with your left leg experience, if it's a little turned out, you do the best you can with setting the foot. You know, it kind of has its own conditioning, I think. You know, and the right leg, if it feels like, oh, big stretch, push a little bit into the belt with your foot. So the back of the leg is straight. Let's take a few more cycles of breath. Okay, if you don't like letting the neck get more stretch, you can feel your head leaning back. Breathing. Now, can you keep the belt coordination with the foot or the legs? Slide the sand to your abdomen if you're using sand. Okay. And it'll be kind of a holder for the breath, right? We're trying to remind the breath to be in the belly body a bit. And so now as I bring my left foot up into the belt, I need my hands behind my head so nothing dramatic happens. But as the right leg lowers down, you can focus on the instructions. I try to keep very simple so you might be able to follow it without necessarily looking at the screen much. So you can just stay kind of embodied, maybe eyes relaxed. And then it feels maybe different sometimes with the belt. Some of it's just time, more time in it, and you get fatigue. So it's not necessarily that you're less mobile on this side with the neck, but I put the sand on the front of the right thigh now. And I like the approach of it kind of crossing, not like straight across horizontal or straight down the leg, just because it just doesn't stay very well for me. So I have it crossed, so it's a little bit on inside the very front of the hip bone. And the belt is very simply, this would be a good one if you were ever to record yourself on your Zoom. I think everybody has that feature that you could do that for yourself just to see your alignment. From one side to the next, that's one way to see what's going on. I'm not sure if everyone has that feature to do that. I'm pretty sure you would. Just having Zoom that you could do little quips on yourself, but I'll check into that. So get a feel where the leg is in its elongation. Both of them, the front thigh, the back of the lifted leg. And breathing. So your body feels the breath. This could be a nice shape for getting the breath focus out of your face because your head is sort of held up here. It's not like you want to add more business going on around your brain, just feeling the brain adjusting here and the gentle lift and circulation to your brain. You might find flexing the right foot is a little too reactive at times. Just let the leg go. And then you might get more sensation in the left leg. So I want you to feel that hugging the bone. So there's resistance. It suctions up into the hip. Yeah, this is one area I'm finding I'm getting some building in this area of my body, my hips. So I'm always working on that over the last several decades at this point. So whatever I can do that I feel is helpful. So if your leg is bending, especially the left leg, if it's trying to bend and resist and shake, you might have to do some bending if you're shaking. Okay, so it's okay. Find what you have to do and then relate to the potential instruction. It might relate to you. And then we're going to keep the leg up. So you'll slide your sand off the right thigh. Reach your hands to the belt, slide it off, head to the blanket, and then bring your right hand up to the belt to grab a hold of it and cross that left leg to, I would say the word to the right is maybe a little too much because I want you to feel that you hold the belt and you guide it that direction across, but you're not fully invested in purely getting as far as possible. You want to feel resistant. So one kind of example is when we're pretty mobile in the hip, or we feel the hip stretch and we want that kind of pulse, that we kind of lose some of this strength in the bone for this shape. So I want to try to thread, so we're doing some good realistic, effective work here for the hip. And we want some work with it feels good. I know that's important too. So when you cross over, get a feel where you're at your range. You're not like at the fullest. And then pull with the hand so you get that resistance all the way up into the muscles, and then hugging into the bone inside. Deeper in the bone, right in the trabecular. So you're trying to really get in there into the bone. And that's that pressure that you're feeling. So let's just let that be for a few more moments. Of course, if there's tension or in the back, then you gotta bend the knee. That's just the way that goes. That's helpful for the back. So go with what works for you if you can straighten it a bit. And then I want you to come back into center with the knee bending to guide you there. And then as you reach up with both feet, push them out. Take a moment here without holding the belt if you can trust. You'll feel difference in the left leg, the right leg with the resistance, but it really fades quick. It's like all that work you just did in the left leg, even you had the brain float and the crossover, and it just kind of takes seconds before it flushes. And then it's kind of back to sort of equal with the other side. The muscle memory is interesting here. And then bend the knees, reach for the belt. If you can get it. Take the feet close, and then left leg down. It's not really that important you have the block and just that you're using it here. It happens to be there. I like that. So hold the belt with the left hand. Now, how high should I struggle? I want you to let your shoulders be back and hold on to the belt, however your natural reach is. And then feel the leg kind of release into the belt, the foot, and then see if you can start that crossover. I know, I think sometimes the direction is too limited. So You go with what feels like your range and what you like. If you have a whole habit here, that you cross it over, you roll your head to the right, and anything else that said isn't interesting, that's fine. But maybe today I'm giving a little bit of focus to the bone, you know, so it's feels like it kind of sucks into it. That's the resistance. It's worth it. And when you're holding on with that left hand, I know your shoulder might get a little nagged. So if that's too much in your shoulder, maybe give yourself a little slack and let your elbow relax on the bolster or the floor. Yeah, if you slow down and you just feel versus how does it look, you might notice different segments on the second hip. Different places in the hip that you feel the sensation than the last side. So I feel some areas are very clearly resisting, and some are pretty mobile, so they don't feel that resistance as much. So I want you to really get into your lateral muscles, the piriformis, you know, the IT band here. Here's the side sheath. Okay, now before we exit, if you can, maybe put your hand onto your abdomen and just notice, is it twisting to the left, or can we keep it just belly up? So there's no, you're not trying to contort and rotate. You're just on back, belly up, navel up, and relaxing the breath. You bend your right knee, pull. I know there's resistance. And then when you take your belt off this time, you'll bring both legs into center. If you have, it could be a block or a ball. I had the vision that the ball would be best, but maybe not. So I'm gonna try the block right now because it's just something that everyone has, I know. So you got a narrow block. If you like your ball and you're gonna use it anyway, that's fine. Stretch open the chest. So you're trying to kind of puff ribs, rib puff. And then as the knees move side to side, you're actually trying to get far over. Like you're tipping the knees side to side, cross the middle, and then get to the point where your back is stretching. Navel is no longer staying facing, or you're not belly up. You're kind of wringing out the belly. You know, like it's this mobile rotation, but the twisting is pretty safe here. It's very elementary. The knees are going side to side, but try to keep that item between the knees so that you have a spacer for the lumbar. Okay? And of course, the bolster is very helpful, right, for our back muscles, for the discs, keeping things spacious. The place we jam up is usually when we sit in a chair, and that's our worst shape for the back. So we can't help but do that, but this is probably a class, maybe we'll do less sitting. Okay. We don't do a lot of seated work, do we? Not much. Just to get from one place to the next sometimes. Okay, so take it as we shift our body weight. We're going to come back in center. I want you to squeeze into the block or ball. Makes it easier with a ball because it has response to the squeeze. I know the block is like, it just kind of holds tension. And then bring your knees to the right. And I want you to just hold that for a few moments. You know, like when you're asked to hold, but don't hold your breath, just a few moments and squeeze and then come back in center. The nice thing about these twists is that, I mean, I'm studying so much about structure and alignment and bones, that when we're on our back and we're doing our twists, we start from a straight spine. If you're standing and those things doing twists, you're not starting from a perfectly lengthened back. So we're going to keep that focus here. Now come back in center and bring your block overhead. Just push it back there. And then as you alternate your knee to your chest, just take a few moments here to squeeze the leg in. If you're worried about holding around your knee area, just hold the back of the leg, no big deal. But I want you to squeeze it in. If you have the hands around the knee, it might feel like there's some reason it's closer, but I don't think that's necessarily evidence if you record it. So alternate and get a feel how that sends motion in the front of the leg. Okay, this is kind of our basic bone movement. Now we're going to bring the knees up, just tilt them up into the center, roll to your left, down to the base towards the foot of your mat. Oh, there's a block stuck there. And then if you have a ball, grab it. If you don't, no big deal, you don't need one. Some of us might not. And you're gonna start setting up for side sage, okay? So get your, it looks like people are like, where are we going? What is the instruction? Get your blanket stacked up behind your bolster. And then take I like a block overhead because I use it for my hand over that reaches, but not all of you use that block. So that's up to you. But get your sandbag ready and place it. You have two options today, okay? You could place it on your left inner leg. This is kind of an approach sometimes I use when you have two sandbags. So if you have two, you could put one on the inside of that left leg. It's not on the very top of my inner thigh. It's kind of just on the lower inner band, okay? And those of you that have one and want to use the sandbag, or sometimes you just come to home practice for Zoom with one anyway, place it on the side. And you can play with the feature of maybe lengthening it today. As we've been this way for a while, we've been horizontal with the ribs. And so when I lengthen, I know I'm trying to feel that reach down with the right leg. And the left leg doesn't really have to be close to the right leg. You could scissor kick your left leg if your sandbag's not on there. That can be kind of nice for the pelvis, okay? But the right hand goes to touch something. It's either it's touching your bolster, it's touching the block, it's on the side. For some of us, it could be open. And settle the brain so you're on the side, or you're on the back of it almost, okay? But if you do choose to get on the side of your head, that might be a nice choice to really truly be kind of on the ear area. And then as the muscles between, right, the left arm between is relaxed. That left arm is stretching your back. It's kind of fun because it's relaxed, but it stretches the back. Ribs move with the breath. Yeah, stay centered with the feeling body. Just keep it simple. Feel the flow of breath. If you can let the arm be basic, so you're not trying to, move the arm with the breath too much. Just let it be simple. So it's slow. It tries to be expansive. Okay, now get a feel on this right reach. Now, it doesn't mean that if your arm is not overhead, you're not getting the whole deal. Let's say my arm is down and I'm still working on the right shoulder being back. That's a nice thing about the arm down, is you can kind of shrug the shoulder back. Okay, and we all have different experiences with this shoulder piece, right? So you need to respond to your needs here with that one. But when you come out of this, we're gonna work our way into shifting to a little bit of seated pattern. It's gonna be on our back after a few moments, but get a feel of letting that sand just slough off. And then as you roll to that left side, you're going to look to your bolster. You're probably looking at the screen as well, but you're gonna turn your, take your blanket off the top blanket, turn the bolster, tip it up on the blanket, and then your other blanket back up, get your block, and then set up your seat in front of your bolster. I would be a little cautious here on going right away with your knees up so that your back muscles, you know, if I sit and I push my knees out, or it tends to tighten in here. So you want to get right up at that bolster with your sacrum, and it nudges, it's nudging the bolster, and then get your blocks under the legs at the low or the mid height, and kind of slide the feet a little bit apart and see if you can get that block underneath and then scoot the feet together. So what happens is my block is kind of nudged in there. I don't know if you've ever placed with the block where you're kind of holding the block in your leg. It's hard. It's a semi-hold, isn't it? Not quite. And then as you lower back, no, let's be beltless on this one. So the neck is supported. I'm not going to try to push my head higher. I don't need more flexion here. I don't need to round more. So you might even palpate there, get your fingers, your finger pads right at the skull, like the brain stem area, the occiput, right, where you usually put your belt for brain flow. And see if you can kind of push that area apart, not closer in. Okay. Yeah, once you get in there, it's like there's a little, looks like there's a little bit of a pushing place. Don't put a push pin in there, but there it is. And then once you connect to that length that connects to your spine, right, that's your spine, one of the spine connectors to the brain, you'll move your chest open. I kind of like to do this sometimes. I don't do this often at all, actually, with the fingers to the brain, the occiput, and then move my elbows out. Then my back is doing a little workout here. So if you feel too much in your back, you can always bring your knees to point up. Okay, you could let the bottoms of the feet down. Now bring your hands back behind you, hold your elbows. Yeah, and center so your skull is supported. You feel that the collaboration of the arms and the head feels supportive. Change the arm crossing if you're choosing that. If you're not choosing this position, you could be with your arms down. Okay? We won't have both offerings on this cycle today, so you choose either arms over or arms down. Okay, now with the abdomen expanding and relaxing, good, cycle through the breath. Now release the arms. And then as you bring your knees to point up, walk the feet in and then slide the blocks a little bit out, or your feet can nudge the blocks. Feel the spine-wise support, right? The bolster is lengthwise through the spine. It's a little different for your mid to lower back. That lowest thoracic to the lumbar. So I want you to feel that that area has a nice arch. Don't over define it, just let it relax itself. So you have your natural curves. Shoulders back. I know, it's just being. And then we're going to push our feet down, push further down to the feet, not slide them down, but push down into the feet, make an imprint. And then what you do is you just let your hips move to the left and you roll to the right and you set up for side sage on the right side down. So we just kind of flow and push. And then as I turn to this next side, I rotate the bolster. I would make sure you do all those things. So we get this nice complete treatment today is what I'm focusing on. Complete treatment. Okay, so ball to the inside of the left leg. Sand is possible. Maybe right inner thigh, maybe for some of you, it stays exactly the same as the last side. Have an intelligent idea. And if the ball's not in the right spot, you can either use it or let it roll away and then reach. Okay, and reaching is maybe with just the leg for some, maybe with the left arm. Struggling between right and left. Okay, so as I motion, I think finding your ability to sometimes get into this real casually is a positive. And so you got there, you don't need to focus on, is it just perfect? But feel the bones settle. And then even your nervous system settling, which includes your eyes, your sensory organ, just letting your eyes relax. Okay, and the body weight. And if you feel there's something that's not quite relaxing and you're tightening more, as time goes, it might be how your head is shifted. Yeah, probably on the side is the best place, not like on the back. Yeah, feel if you're tending to roll the shoulder back and push. That might be easier for some of us to roll the shoulder back and reach for the block, but you know, you can kind of shimmy a little bit with this rib shoulder space, and you know, kind of feel how your ribs and a very slight ability of your chest muscles to mobilize. Even if my arm is down, I can still kind of work that. Okay. I mean, it's just such complicated muscles up here and bones in the shoulder area. We do a lot with moving and pulling with them, so that's one reason why they do stay pretty dense. But sometimes that density makes it a little bit crunchy. The crunchy shoulders. Okay, so see if you can let that crunch settle. Feeling the ribs moving with the breath. Okay, now your right leg is really going to be the exact same as this shape when we come into pigeon. It's not going to shift much. In fact, this is sort of the leg awareness is that, isn't it? It's just the body weight into it is different when we get up. So slide your sand and maybe be a little curious. I know looking at the screen is a big piece of this, but move the ball and then pull your blanket stack in. Let's just have them both there. If you've got a block back there, move it. But see if you can get on the bolster with your right leg, bend the knee like you have. It's the push the foot closer to the bolster, and then swing the left leg back. Not like we're trying to be perfect choreographed motion, but it's all linked up, right? It's not very complicated. Okay. Why do that? Why do complicated? So when we shift, we have the front of the left thigh. It stretches. We've got our elbows on something, unless you're comfortable with them all the way down. Could be. Yeah, I kind of like, for right now, this lift with my arms. It feels like I can kind of find the network in my back. Feels kind of balanced, this bridge in my back area from one side to the other. It feels like it's kind of a nice cross layer. So as the weight is in that right leg, if I do lower my elbows down, I get more stretch in my hip. I do feel that. But I'm focusing more on my spine. And if you need to work more on your hip, you would just lower down. And that would put more into the hip. If it hurts, then don't go farther down. What if it always hurts? Okay, so take your time, whether you shift a little side to side, you probably feel the bones pressing. And letting maybe the circulation transition into your hip for a few more breaths. Now, where do you feel awareness that connects from your right hip into the right side of the spine? So this left side, when we transition, I want us to keep the movement process really what works for you. So for some of us, it might be to push back, hands and knees, and then slide the leg forward like you go through cat-cow kind of thing. I'm gonna go just real traditional because I'm already on my bolster this way. So I'm just gonna lean my body weight to my right thigh, swing the left leg forward, and just change to the other crossing. Now, some of us might to the other pigeon crossing, right leg back and down. Some of us might wanna come back on hands and knees and then slide the left leg forward. So we'll get there to hands and knees in the next pose, but you can do those extra movements if you like, but get a feel for being now into the pigeon pose with the left knee bending. And again, the height underneath your leg bones is only going to support your back lumbar area, right? Less pressure. So get a feel for the weight into the hip. Neutralize the arch in the spine. Breathing slowly. Now feel where the waist reaches from that right hip flexor, the back leg. Now, if your elbows are far down, it might not feel as much of a kind of an arch through that area, but it's nice to notice that all these different arches in the body, sometimes it's good not to notice them and just to exist, but kind of get a feel that there's more than just the spine's arch, right? We want to keep the leg bones, the femur, that area also receiving that resistance. Okay, so when we come back with our hands on the ground now, move your blocks to the sides, just easy reach. And then as the fingers spread out, load into the bones, right? Load into the hands. And then feel that position of the right foot, toes under. And I want you to lift up your hips off the bolster and then slide the left knee back. And I would take the bolster to turn it straight forward so it's underneath your core, and also get rid of one of the blankets. Okay, so you only have one under your knees, and your toes, they could be flat, top of the foot could be flat, the toes could be under, but feel the reach of the fingers out wide and round your back, chin to chest. Arch the spine. Reach the spine into a nice tilt. So you're feeling that you're alternating from rounding, but be careful that you're pushing through the hands and make sure that they're spread apart, not just the hands, but the fingers, and alternate rounding. And you can keep the eyes open or closed to kind of feel the movement of the ribs, the back, the front. And then easily, you're going to lower down onto the bolster, okay? You might feel that it's best to have the bolster so it's at the very top of the thighs. And then as you lower down, can you keep your elbows off the ground so they're still shifting to my sides? If I lower down, they're not going to be obviously straight. They're going to be kind of grasshopper-like. So the tops of the feet resting, and the arms by the sides and the elbows bending so that we can strengthen our back. And it's not so much spine as much as it's the paraspinals, right? Baby back bend. So try this. I know sometimes at home practice, I find I would just pass on these and just kind of rest on my head. I mean, I don't do this in my class here, but if I'm taking one, I might sometimes. So just try it. I mean, they're almost always credible, good back strengthening poses, right? And so when we slump or we drop or droop forward, these muscles get very weak. So feel if you can stretch your arms straight by the sides. It just gets easier with time, this simple action. Feel your hands open. And as you move your hands back down, that's pretty easy. Bring the elbows down so you're in more of a Sphinx pose. We're still with it. And manage the arch and the spine and feel if you have your elbows maybe a little forward of the bolster, a tiny bit. Just notice how that stretches into the shoulder, a slight amount into your shoulder. Okay, tops of the feet resting. Belly moves into the movement of the breath to the bolster. Okay, now one more time. I know all you got is your legs just kind of reaching back here in the shape. It can help you a lot, can they, with your back muscles in this position. So when you slide your hands back and you push and lengthen your arms down through the elbows, up into the top arm, press and lengthen in the front. Yeah, it feels kind of nice to get that reach in the core pathway. Okay, now when you hook your toes under, you're going to push to come back. Now my tendency is I slide my knees to get up. So what I'm trying to get is to use my arms in my upper back to push back. So if you did slide your knees back, come back down to up dog, toes relaxed, and then toes under, and use it like you're doing a push-up. And you're gonna push back to your table. Okay, so now change it up. Take the bolster, push it aside. As I don't know, I did not mention when we got into the Zoom that we're gonna use a wall, but we are gonna try for some wall stuff pretty soon. So I want you to start working. We're gonna do some lunge patterns and some strength into the legs, which actually strengthens the spine. So when we take the hands here to about shoulder distance, and I want you to step through with that right foot and just get a feeling now with your hands down towards the ground. If this is really tough for you to get your hands down, then you use your blocks, but we're going to get them at some point anyhow. But I want you to feel, if you could keep your foot kind of in center-ish of your hands, it might not be perfect in the middle, but it's to the right, of course, because it's the right foot. And get a feel here when you step in, the circulation that stimulates right from the heel bone up into the leg bones, okay? And then you'll bring that knee back, that right foot back, and lift up into down dog, so stretch. Yeah, this is such a nice balance of stretch and strength. So meander with the motion of the arms pushing the floor away. I know, and the floor, I hope, doesn't get pushed away. That's a prop you like to keep pretty solid. And it doesn't seem like a prop, but it is. Okay, now try this time that when you do step your left foot forward, your knees are off the ground. Okay, step the left foot front, get a feel here when that left foot is forward, the right knee goes down. If your hands can be on the ground, try. If it's too much, use blocks. You don't have to be this far pressing down to stretch your back, but you try. You can always be, a little bit on the fingers, pads. You just have to be careful of the wrist. Sometimes this can be prior to pushing into the wrist too much. So take a few moments to feel that motion into that left leg. Okay, and then we'll get our blocks. We'll start with the left leg for this side because we're already into it. And then as you lift up your right knee, stay with the solid lunge. Okay, and I'm going to avoid twisting from a forward bend. Okay, that's revolved triangle, right? That's what that is. So we're probably going to take pause on that for a little bit. We're talking for months here to develop this strength, not just in a class today, but solid. So if you like revolving triangles, you can do them at your own and on your own. That's fine. But feel the lunge through that left leg, and can you keep the balance in your back leg? I don't want you to trip on your blanket, but come up to a mid to high lunge. Now this would be kind of more mid lunge, low lunge would be knee on the blanket. And then if I come up, oh, the foot of course gets a little squirmy, but feel if you can be strong into that left thigh, just moments. And then the arms go up, the elbows go out, and try to steady. We're not asking for you to jump up and down, but get a feel of the right foot, the ball of the foot, that stretch through. And then as you come back down with your hands to the blocks, good job. See if you can stretch through that right heel to stretch your calf towards the heel towards the ground. Both feet are parallel, but not on the same track, okay? Just get a feel here. If the left leg is starting to straighten, go for it. If it doesn't want to and you want to keep it bending, that's fine. I want you to mostly focus on the back leg, the heel reaching to the floor. Okay. I'm trying to extend out of my spine. Breathing. No twisting. That's key here. Okay, now step the right foot forward. Feet not quite hips distance, but step them apart, and then place the block or ball between the knees. So it's narrow, you're still facing the front of your mat, but the block is between the knees, not the thighs. Now if I come up here, it's a little different pressure in my spine. So between the knees, it's gonna kind of hold into your hip. And then as you're in this shape and chair, I want you to actually bring your hands to your hips. So feel like there's the buttock, there's the hips, and then I feel the arch in the spine, okay? Bring your arms up besides your head. You probably can't see all of me, but this is where my arms are besides my head. And then as you feel the hip position, it may not even feel that cranky for you or that difficult, but try to keep the knees bending is the key. I mean, if I straighten up, oh, that's kind of relief, but see if you can bend the legs so you can suck it up into the hips. Oh, they'll be glad. They'll be mad and glad. And then bring your arms forward. Of course, stretch the legs out straight back, and then take the block out and switch. So the left foot steps back, and you're already kind of in this upward momentum. So come back up. Once your body has had this kind of conversation of down and lift, oops, you work on trying to balance. You're on a carpet, we're going to give you extra credit today. Okay, so you feel the ball of the back foot pressing, you feel this arch, and remember that block you have between the knees. You want to kind of manage that the right knee isn't wobbling out or too far in, it's somewhere in the middle, like there's something on the inside of the knee that's trying to hold it. Really stabilize with the arms reaching. Breathe with half a smile, knowing you're just about ready to go to the wall. And then lower the hands down. Okay, so now we step back, we lower the left knee down, we take the right leg back about a little wider than hips distance, and then take a few motions of rocking the body forward and back. So you reach the hips down and you feel the spine arching, chin up, and then manage that cycle of movement, the arms reaching and stretching back, the hips stretch back. Breathing, inhale, lengthen, and exhale back. We have one more leg position to fully finish that out. Okay, so next time you come back forwards, okay, come back to the middle and step the right foot. Right, we still have one more. We got to finish out this calf on the left calf. So the left leg lifts up to the knee and stretch the heel towards the ground. If you need your blocks, use them. You don't have to. Sometimes you do need them, but you're trying to work with this circulation to the face, so you're a little bit down with your awareness into your sinuses here, so it can be a little intense, but try to lengthen that right leg and use your blocks if it seems wise, right? Like you're struggling, you're doing too much rounding, you're shaking, then you get your blocks and they help. Even just a little height is quite amazing here for support. A few more moments, try to keep that left heel reaching down towards the ground. I don't know where else it would go. Yeah, lots of leg loading today. Yeah, and kind of visualize around the knee, the support, the circulation. And then we're gonna step forward. Now I want us to find our way towards the wall. This might get you to walk to a wall, huh? So you can step front, take a moment and forward bend. Some of you like forward bends. They're not always the most effective, right? And that we don't have to do these patterns of moving your head down. So I want you to be a little careful. So you want to feel some strength into your back sometimes when you push into your feet as well, not just completely collapsing. So those of you take a few moments in your forward bend if you like to hold your elbows, if it feels good, but we all have unique situations. So some of you are going to be doing this pattern, some of us aren't as much. Okay, so find our way to a wall. So what you're going to need is your bolster, your blocks, and you want to get close to a wall space. So let's take ourselves to the wall. Got a blanket already for me, but I want you to have all your goodies except your belt. And if you have a ball, take it to the wall. Okay, you can toss it. You can play wall ball. Okay, so on your back, knees towards the wall, toes are hooked under a little bit so I can kind of stretch my toes, not all the way up the wall, but as much as I could. And then I would get I think what we'll start with is actually the full bridge. So I want you to have let's go with 2 blocks. Some of you do a really deep bridge, I know, and have one pointed up, but have both of them. And then step the feet up. Okay. It's not going to start exactly as you think. So we have our feet up at the wall, the knees bending, because it's about a right angle that you can tell. And then we'll cross the left foot to the right knee. And if your right foot needs to slide down a little bit, that's fine. That might feel kind of good. And if there's not a big stretch in your left hip, that's okay. I want you to kind of warm the hip up for where we're going here. So you feel maybe a little arch through the low back. That's about all the arch you want. If your rib cage is starting to arch, like if you slide your fingers around the ribs back, and you feel that's a lot of lift, you want to get those ribs so they're centered on the floor and that there's not the big arch in the ribs. None of us want to do back bends in our thoracic, right? Those are going to be the lumbars that can do the back bend. You want that to be more spacious, which sounds a little strange when you think arch, spacious, seems compression, but it's opening that up. So switch the side left foot to wall, right foot to left knee. You might even feel your back get a little stretch here. Right knee is trying to go towards the wall. We don't want it to pull to the chest. We are trying to get it to open. So if you put your hand onto the right inner knee, that's fine. Just see what your natural range is. Okay. Settle the hips down heavy. Let it be easy. It's okay just to have something that you've done many times, laying on your back, looking at the sky. Okay. And now take that right foot to the wall and push into your feet. Now you could slide your feet up the wall as much as you want. You probably don't want to do it all the way like the length, straight leg, because you can't get your hips to lift, but you have full license to go closer to the wall or scoot closer. Now, when you lift up your hips, don't make it so jolty. That was a little jolty lift off for me, but you want to lift and lower and just let your arms be relaxed down from your shoulders. But go slow. Good. Yeah, some of us, and I can see, right, the feet they're up the wall a bit, right? This is nice to get that step up because then you can massage into the upper back. So you can even scoot closer to the wall if you decide, oh, that's feels kind of good. And I don't know how high you want your definition, but if you don't like your blanket under your head, don't use it. Some of us will feel just fine without the blanket, especially if you're on a carpet, right? It'll feel just fine. Okay, so now when you lift up, I want you to feel the first moment of lift where it feels like you're just sort of, you have a little bit of a tucking, but you're not pushing up into the bridge pose. That's a little exuberant. Okay, now you feel where it pushes into your back and you want to create that circulation, that dense pressure creates the pressure creates the density. So now when we lift up, so you feel kind of like your hips kind of hang down, but you're pushing into your feet, and that helps push into the spine. It's pretty cool. So now when I lift, I'm going to get a block, and I'm going to place it under my back of my pelvis. This is such a safe pose for our back, for whatever degree of back issues you got. This is good for you. Your bridge poses are great. But I'm going to keep it kind of that center height. Some of you might be just fine walking your feet up a little bit more. Now remember, you push into your feet, that cycles into the back of the legs, the glutes, and then you lift the hips if you want to get a little bit higher with the block. And one thing I'm finding, since I spend so much energy on trying to help strengthen things that are related to my spine, is that the glutes, right? Doing glute work is going to be good for your lumbars, your back muscles, the paraspinals, the whole connection in the hip. So I would feel your feet push into the wall and then feel that connection up into your buttocks, feel the contraction, and use that when you get that block underneath. Okay, and some of you are going to walk your feet down the wall and get that opening in the front of the hip joint. And that feels so nice to have that. Probably some of us can do this with this height, and some are going to find that just doesn't feel right. So if you're not in that category, those of you that are up with a high block, stay. Feet can be on the wall or on the floor. Those of us that have the block at the mid height could have 2 blocks side by side. So my blocks are side by side under my pelvis. Right, like that. They're right immediately next to each other. They're not under my ribs, just my low back. And then I come down with my feet. And if you delight in having your feet at the wall, then just keep that. That's fine. You could even rest your heels at the wall for this one. Okay? So take a few moments with breathing where your shoulders are rolled down and in towards your spine. And you encourage that space of the rib cage to open again, like we did in the beginning. We started with this kind of idea. We had our block, but we had the bolster as well. But we're going kind of full circle. Core pathway. Okay, be sure that you're comfortable with your neck here. If you don't want the blanket, it is okay to move it. Try not to roll your head side to side. Be careful of the neck. Now bring your feet up the wall, bending knees. And now feel the feet separate as parallel as you can tell. Toes are up. And then when you push into your feet now, I want you to let the circulation kind of pull back into your upper back. And then push into your feet. Now, if you have a really high block, you actually have to lift your hips completely to get that out. But if you don't have to lift very high. And then you can slide your blocks away. You won't need them again, unless you like using them for other things. But you'll have your arms down by the sides. Feel the spine touch in, touch down, and lower the spine. Okay, really get a rich touch down with the vertebrae. Where else do you get a feel on? Kind of rare. Okay, so now we're going to take a simple rotation, and I want you to let it be real easeful today. So we're going to pass on the idea that we have to use a bolster, but you might still like that. So I'm going to demo this one. So the left leg crosses over my right leg. My knees go to the right. Now, you might use a block on this one, huh? You might find the bolster is helpful, but if you go farther down than the height of the bolster is going to kind of put you back. You're going to be going backwards in your progress. So I have my left leg over my right. My knees are both fully bent. My knees go to the right and downwards. And if there's a little bit of space, I guess you could put the ball. I like the ball at the sacrum. I think it's a very wise support. And then you could add sand to the outer left leg, or just be like, this is enough. I get enough stretch here. I don't need more. Blanket under your head and let your head roll to the left. Okay, it's a little different than when we use the bolster with the crossover hook. It's probably richer in some ways. And it's nice after that bridge collaboration, just different. So when your head rolls to the left, let your eyes relax. And feeling that cycle of motion through the ribs. Now head goes back to center. Okay, and when you prep to go to the second side, if you have no sand, it might be speedier, but at the same rotation will all send the position. So you might put your feet back up at the wall just to center your back of your pelvis. This is just a good prop for my leg muscles into my spine. And then lower the left foot, cross the right leg over the left leg, and let the knees shift over to the left. Yeah, and you're not trying to find an adjustment or a pop or anything. I mean, it might happen for some people, but the goal would be keep it very clean on one to the other side. Don't make too many, exaggerate the motion. You want to feel like your very lower piece of the bones and the hips is balancing right now. I like the ball a lot on this one. I think I'm liking it more and more for this crossover for the sacrum. But the sand is completely an option. Okay, if you need a little bit more, having your foot next to the wall might add a bit. You might feel like it's adding a bit more tug into the hip. And then let your head roll to the right. Feel that dynamic through the hip. Breathing slow. Exhale completely. You know, once you slide the sand away, we're at the wall, so we'll need it when we go upside down, but I want you to move the ball and then let your knees swish side to side like windshield wiper. If you're jammed up to the wall with your feet and just it's too close, slide back a little bit. But I kind of like having my feet, you know, we started with our feet at the wall, at the bottom. You know, we had our toes a little bit, tiny bit up. Just kind of feel that, increase that range in your lateral leg bones. Just take it slow, rocking side to side with the legs so the shoulders are back. And then roll to any side and crawl your way, pushing back, and get a bolster and put it up right against the wall. Okay, even if you're like someone who wants to do shoulder stand right now, this might be a better choice because of the hip work we did and kind of motion. Just try the Viparita Karani today. So we have our bolster right against the wall, our blanket. That's pretty close because you're not that far from your hips to your head. And if you use your other blanket across your body, if you're cold, that's good. And then you shift your hips back all the way to your sitting bones at the wall. And then as we are very well known about lifting the legs, we swing them up and you might roll over the other side of the bolster. So take the time to, you know, figure out today, do you want to be seat at the wall? It feels good today for me. Some days I'm not close enough to feel my seat to the wall. So it just kind of is, it's just whatever ends up happening. Soles of the feet in sand. So get your sand on your soles. Okay, if you feel like your soles are at your ribs, you can have your sand there. And having the support of pressure into the legs, okay? I kind of like this one where I get my heels and my hands at the top of my thighs and my thigh lids because they drop, you know, with gravity, everything's just kind of dropping. The nice thing here is the organs, the bladder, all that area is opposite of prolapse, right? So you're helping that area out with toning in the organs. So this is a great homework. This one is the one to do, and we're doing it now. So if I put my hands at the front of the thighs, I'm kind of jostling those tissues a little side to side. And, you know, you're trying to press and get those legs really to the wall. Solid flex of the feet. All right, spine lengthens. And then let your legs, they're gonna just lower, all the skin is gonna go in its own direction. So let it go. And then feel where the tailbone presses into the bolster. So you have the natural arch. Your hands could be on the abdomen, they could be out to the sides or in cactus or straight back. And then as the momentum of breath is apparent, that your eyes kind of coach you to turning the focus inwards. Inhale, filling the belly. Exhale, letting go. Just be careful that the momentum of the breath, as you elongate the exhale, then just enjoy the circulation of the shape, how the legs are upside down, how the pelvis is resting, lifted, and the tailbone is one place you could direct a little bit of pressure. And finally, let the weight of your head feel like it's not so tilted back with the chin up. You want to find a little bit of connection into your throat, into the thyroid. So, feel like the chin is not fully pushing down to the chest, but there's circulation indeed in the throat when you swallow. This is really stimulating that area of the thyroid, right? It's a lot of flow into that pool at the throat. Bend the knees. Shift the feet just a titch off the wall, and then lower down the knees and reach up to the sand. Slide it away. And then let the hands maybe hold the backs of the legs for a moment. And that just kind of flows a little bit more into the core, doesn't it? Up into the throat. A lot of circulation from this shape, dynamic. Great. So you might do minimal rocking. You don't want to do this big, wild, frenzied rock side to side of the knees, but just a little bit of that circulation pulse, and let yourself roll. But do try to come up so that your back is at the wall so that you can work with a seated shape where there's the natural arch, right? You don't really have like a bucket seat right now. Like if you're in a car, it's going to tilt your back in that shape, so that right now you can work with the feeling of the shoulders prominent, back, and the spine. There's no spine really pushing into the wall. You have a natural arch. So let the spine center itself inwards and the mind a little bit back to the wall. Let's slide the hands on the thighs and lift them up in front of the heart. Feel the palms press. And let's unite as a collaborative, just connecting with breath.